story continues now with Caleb Kruckenberg, an attorney with the new Civil Liberties Alliance. That's representing the plaintiff in this case. Good morning, Caleb.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Talk about your and Clark Aposhian's take on this ban from the president.
Well, the New Civil Liberties Alliance is a group that was founded to restore constitutional order and protect American citizens against administrative overreach. And we got involved in this case because we believe that this is a very clear example of a situation where even though Congress has not ruled on this issue, and actually Congress has said for years that bump stocks are not machine guns, they're not prohibited weapons, and even though that is what the law says, the executive branch, acting through the ATF, has said, we're willing to rewrite what the law is to make bump stocks prohibited items.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that's just not the way the Constitution allows the government to function.
Help me understand the process just a little bit, Caleb. Doesn't Congress have the authority to delegate to these federal agencies? I mean, the FCC does communications, the FTC does trade. Doesn't the ATF have the ability to handle things within its area of expertise? And wouldn't one of those be to define, what is a machine gun, what is not? That seems like a pretty specific thing that would be better handled by an agency and not by Congress as a whole.
Well, Congress has said very specifically what is and is not a machine gun, and they've passed a very specific definition. And unfortunately, what's happened is the ATF, which you're right is tasked with interpreting what a machine gun is, has changed the definition in a very basic sense, because as the ATF itself recognized for more than 10 years, in ruling after ruling, bump stocks are not machine guns under the statutory definition, under the language that Congress passed, because they don't have the fundamental characteristics of a machine gun. And I think it's very telling that the experts within the ATF, the ones who have examined bump stocks and examined these firearms, have said repeatedly, they are not machine guns. They are not machine guns the way that Congress has defined machine guns. And unfortunately, what's happened is, because of political pressure, the ATF has been forced to change its position. And I'll note that Acting Director Brandon of the ATF testified before Congress just last year that even the experts within the ATF said that these are not machine guns, but because of input from the Attorney General and from the President, the ATF was forced to change its position.
But the bump stock itself is not a machine gun, but doesn't it, and forgive my lack of expertise, doesn't it turn the gun it's attached to into a machine gun?
It doesn't the way Congress defined a machine gun. And I think probably the easiest way to understand this is the way Congress defined a machine gun. It said basically every time you pull the trigger, a machine gun fires more than one shot. If you pull the trigger once and there's one bullet or one shot, then it's not a machine gun. And that's kind of been the rule since Congress passed the definition. What happens with a bump stock is this is a device that allows a person to pull the trigger more rapidly. But what makes them not machine guns under the definition is that for every shot that's fired by the weapon, the shooter has to engage the trigger one time per shot. And that's why the ATF has said repeatedly, they're not machine guns because they don't allow automatic firing. They don't allow continuous firing for every time you pull the trigger. And the new definition just changes that, and it says that is no longer the limit that in the definition. And from here on out, machine guns can mean whatever we want them to mean.
That's helpful. I appreciate that. That's helpful.
No, we appreciate your time, Caleb. Thank you very much for joining us. That's our big story coverage with Caleb Kruckenberg, an attorney with the New Civil Liberties